Before the world was connected by steel and steam, it was bound by chains. Not chains of iron, but chains of gold, sugar, and human lives. An empire rose, not on land, but on the vast, unforgiving waters of the Atlantic. Its currency was human souls, its foundation was suffering, and its legacy is a wound that time has yet to heal. This is the story of the largest forced migration in human history, an economic machine that devoured millions and forever altered the course of 3 continents. How did a system so brutal become the engine of global power? And what happens when profit is valued more than humanity itself? Before the first slave ship set sail, the world looked vastly different. In the early years, Europe was emerging from the Middle Ages, hungry for wealth and new trade routes to the east. Portugal and Spain, with their advanced maritime technology, led the charge. Their ships, initially seeking gold and spices along the African coast, encountered something far more profitable: a pre-existing system of servitude. In West and Central Africa, powerful kingdoms like Congo, Oyo, and Dahomey thrived with complex societies and economies. Slavery existed here, but it was not the chattel, race-based system it would become. It was often a consequence of war or debt, with paths to freedom and integration. The Americas, meanwhile, were a new world to the Europeans, lands of immense resources, but lacking the labor force they desired to exploit them, especially after disease decimated indigenous populations. These 3 worlds, a hungry Europe, a diverse Africa, and a resource-rich America, were on a collision course, about to be locked into a brutal, triangular relationship that would reshape them all. The engine of this new global economy ignited in the 16th century. It was a triangular trade route, elegant in its deadly simplicity. European ships, laden with manufactured goods like guns, textiles, and alcohol, sailed to the West African coast. There, these goods were traded for captured Africans. This was the infamous Middle Passage. Packed into the suffocating, disease-ridden holds of ships, millions of men, women, and children endured a journey of unimaginable horror. For weeks, sometimes months, they were chained in darkness, surrounded by death and despair. The mortality rate was staggering. It's estimated that nearly 2 million people died during the crossing alone. Those who survived the voyage were sold in the Americas, primarily in Brazil and the Caribbean. There, they were forced into brutal labor on sugar, tobacco, and cotton plantations under the constant threat of the whip. Their lives were stripped of all autonomy, their families torn apart, their cultures suppressed. The raw materials they produced were then shipped back to Europe, generating immense profits that fueled industrial revolutions and built sprawling colonial empires. This was not just trade. It was a highly organized, state-sponsored system of human trafficking. A captain might say, a loss of 1 in 3 is a profitable voyage. An enslaved person might whisper to their child, hold on to your name. It is all they cannot take. For over 3 centuries, this cycle of exploitation continued, a relentless machine grinding lives into profit, turning the Atlantic Ocean into a graveyard while building the foundations of the modern Western world. But here's the unsettling truth often glossed over in textbooks. The Transatlantic Slave Trade wasn't just a story of European villains and African victims. It was a complex web of complicity and cooperation. The system could never have reached its monstrous scale without the active participation of certain African rulers and merchants. European traders rarely ventured deep inland to capture people themselves. Instead, they established forts along the coast and exploited existing rivalries between African states. They offered weapons, rum, and other goods in exchange for prisoners of war, criminals, or people kidnapped by local raiding parties. Kingdoms like Dahomey and the Asante Empire became powerful middlemen, their wealth and military might growing directly from their role in the slave trade. This created a devastating cycle. Selling captives for firearms allowed a kingdom to conquer its neighbors, generating more captives to sell for more firearms. It was a devil's bargain that tore the social fabric of West Africa apart, turning communities against each other and fueling an arms race with catastrophic consequences that lasted for generations. The uncomfortable question isn't just how Europeans could be so cruel, but how human beings on both sides of the trade could become entangled in such a profoundly dehumanizing enterprise. The legacy of the transatlantic slave trade is not a relic of the past. It is written into the DNA of our modern world. The immense wealth extracted from enslaved labor directly funded the Industrial Revolution in Europe and America, building cities, banks, and universities that still stand today. The economies of entire nations were built on this foundation of suffering. In the Americas, the trade created deeply entrenched racial hierarchies and systemic inequalities that persist to this day, fueling ongoing struggles for civil rights and social justice. The vibrant cultures of the African diaspora, from the music and food of the Caribbean to the spiritual traditions of Brazil and the United States, are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable oppression. They are echoes of the cultures that were stolen, transformed, and reborn across the ocean. The abolitionist movements that rose to fight this horrific trade became the blueprint for future human rights campaigns, proving that moral conscience can, eventually, triumph over greed. The ocean keeps its secrets, but the echoes of the millions who crossed it in chains will never be silenced. They are in our music, our cultures, and the ongoing fight for a more just world. History is not just a story of what happened. It is a lesson in what we must never allow to happen again. Thank you for watching.